And we can talk now to Knut Abraham, a member of the German Bundestag for Chancellor Merz's conservative CDU party. He is also a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and a former diplomat and a soldier. Welcome to DW. Thanks so much for your time today. What do you think about the fact that Vladimir Putin won't be attending these peace talks with Ukraine in Turkey, talks that he himself proposed?
Yes, exactly. But it is basically and foremost a positive development that there are any talks going on. There haven't been contacts except for prisoner exchange for many months and years. And so the sheer fact that delegations meet is positive. But on the other hand, what does Putin want to tell the world by sending a third-rank, a third-class delegation to negotiations which should lead or what could lead to a ceasefire? With the composition of this delegation, you can see clearly the intent by the Russian president not to proceed, but just to play on the chess field.
Well, that's right. I mean, is Putin serious about peace talks? I mean, you know, is this, as you're saying, is this just a manoeuvre to avoid implementing this 30-day ceasefire that was called for by the US president and by Kyiv's European allies? Is this all delay tactics?
Yes, this is an old Russian trick. We have seen that in the Minsk agreements we had in the years following 2014. The old trick to start kind of contacts of negotiations and then prolong, intend and just pretend to be interested in a dialogue, but in fact not moving a millimeter. This is an old Russian trick, and that should be put into consequences, and we should proceed with the sanctions and, of course, with the delivery of weapons.
Well, Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, he, of course, went to Kyiv, didn't he, with the Polish, French leaders and British leaders threatened Putin with harsh new sanctions if he didn't agree to an immediate ceasefire. The question is, though, is this pressure working? Does Putin care what Europe does?
This is absolutely dependent on how we proceed in the next days. So the European Union and European allies, as the UK, we have to keep the path and work on strengthening the sanctions so that there is no misunderstanding in Moscow, that we really mean it seriously. And this is also true for more defense, more air defense, more weapons of any kind for Ukraine.
And is that going to happen? I mean, Merz called on the previous government to send German long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine. He is in charge now. Is he going to deliver?
In my understanding, there are talks going on how to deal with the famous Taurus question. It is clear that this will not be a path only by Germany. It is to be included in a common European approach. But this, I think, will happen if we do not see immediate results of these ceasefire, whatever, contacts or negotiations.
I'm sure everyone will be watching closely. Christian Democratic Union lawmaker Knut Abraham, thank you so much, Mr. Abraham, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And we can also talk to Olena Prokopenko here. She's a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund and a former advisor to Ukraine's finance minister. She joins us from Brussels. Olena, President Putin has decided not to meet his Ukrainian counterpart for peace talks in Turkey, even though it was Russia itself that proposed direct talks. What message does that send?
Well, Putin's demonstrative no-show to the meeting that he himself initiated once again clearly demonstrates that Russia is not interested in the peace talks. It's not interested or ready for a ceasefire. It's not interested in lasting peace. Russia's goal, in fact, in the past 11 years since we waged this war against Ukraine, has not changed. Russia still wants Ukraine to surrender, be it through the genocide that Russia is committing in Ukraine or through the diplomatic means. So Putin wants to remain in these negotiations. He wants to drag them on for as long as possible without any outcomes. He wants to use them in order to retain access to President Trump and increase economic cooperation with the U.S. But he's not interested in any substantive discussion, and we have been seeing it all along, unfortunately.
I should just mention that Russia, of course, would deny that it's committing genocide in Ukraine. Nonetheless, these are the first direct peace talks between Moscow and Kyiv in 3 years. Could something positive, do you think, come out of this?
Well, this looks like an important milestone, but if we look again at the space for compromise, at the substance, at the positions of the two parties involved, we see that there's no space for any compromise. Ukraine says that it's there in Istanbul to discuss ceasefire, 30-day ceasefire that the US proposed and Ukraine accepted. And Russia basically sends its delegation chaired by Medinsky, who rejects the whole idea of Ukraine as a state, and who chaired Russia's delegation back in 2022 when Russia tried to force Ukraine into an agreement that would in fact mean Ukraine's capitulation. So I think the best outcome that's come out of this meeting is for the US to finally acknowledge that Russia is not ready for peace, it's not ready even for temporary ceasefire. And this is when the West should start taking it seriously as well. It should unite, it should put pressure on Russia through sanctions, including secondary sanctions, through political isolation, and the West should run to Ukraine.
What about those sanctions? As you say, the U.S. and the EU have threatened to impose more sanctions on Russia if it doesn't show willingness to make peace. Do you think those sanctions will now be forthcoming? And if so, to what effect?
Well, I'm very hopeful about the sanctions that have just been agreed upon by the European member states, and these sanctions will affect Russia's military capabilities. But of course, the U.S. sanctions will be most significant, and they would, if they are voted, which will probably create a lot of political tensions between all the key parties involved. I mean, we know that this will not be an easy vote in Congress, but it's important that these sanctions are imposed because peace in Ukraine and Ukraine's security is European security and, in fact, global security. And I think Trump gets increasingly more frustrated with how Putin slaps him on the face, rejecting everything Trump tries to do in these peace talks. And I think we're getting to the point when the US may join the EU in finally putting significant pressure on Russia that will increase the cost of this war for Putin and for Russia at large.
Olena Prokopenko, Senior Fellow at the German Marshall Fund, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.